1. I don't remember any of this, but it was my mother who told me this story. She first told me when I was young enough for it to freak me out, but recently she brought it up again and I wanted to share it. When I was younger, not quite sure how young, but I was still sleeping in a crib, probably around 2001 or 2002. We lived in a town called Putnam Valley in New York. We lived in this little apartment on a hill directly behind, they were attached, a bigger house. Probably like 200 or so yards away was another smaller house that the man who owned the property had lived in. I guess they had block parties during the summer or something, so my parents were at one with me. My mom said that a weird old lady, direct quote, started talking to her about ghosts and how she was a psychic or some shit. This older woman had since begun living in the landlord's house. She claimed that while she was hanging her laundry in the attic, the old landlord came to visit her and said he wanted to visit little Cassandra, that's my full name, by Thursday. So of course my mom was like, yeah, okay, what the fuck, bye. Because who just approaches someone and says something like that, right? Well, about a week went by and nothing happened. So my mom kind of forgot because she was a busy person, taking care of a toddler, working, having a family, etc. One night, a Wednesday night, or more like Thursday morning, my mom recalls not being able to sleep. While she was and still is an insomniac, she always said that this was different. She had tried everything, even switched rooms. It was pretty hot that night and we didn't have an air conditioner at the time, so she figured it was just the humidity and the heat that was making her uncomfortable. She was in the computer room. This was when computers still required the really big towers and dial-up. So she was listening to the humming of the computer tower when, all of a sudden, she heard me walking down the hallway. I walked into the computer room where she was and she said, "Cassie, how did you get out of your crib?" And to her absolute horror, I casually responded, "Mommy, the man helped me." She was a new mother, and she's always been an anxious person, so I'm sure that her asshole was up in her throat after I said that. To say that she shat a brick is the understatement of the century. She was up in a few seconds, clutching me to her chest. She inched towards my bedroom door, pressed back flush against the wall, reaching her arm in to try to reach my light switch. My room was cold. My room was freezing cold. And for a humid 90-degree night in New York, keeping the upstairs cool when you can't afford an air conditioner is impossible. Needless to say that she just called for my dad, and made him pull out the couch in the living room. My mother said that she just stayed awake the entire night out of fear. I'm gonna be 18 in like 3 months, and I can happily say nothing like that has ever happened to either of us again. And I'm not sure what to make of it. I have a few questions about why it may have happened, but there isn't really any way to find out. We've since moved, several times actually, and I've never been back. Update. So while my mom was getting ready for work, I bombarded her with a few questions. This cleared up a whole bunch, and I got a couple things wrong. The old lady's name was Lucy. She was like a recluse, so seeing her out was definitely strange. Lucy told my mother that she had died in the middle of an operation and came back being able to see things. My mother saw her after the incident and not before. She told my mother that she used to see Mr. Dinnerstein in our attic. He used to own the property us and our neighbors lived on. My mother actually worked at the assessor's office in the town hall at the time, around 01 to 02. So one day she checked, and there was a Mr. Dinnerstein on the original deed to our property. The crib I slept in didn't have any movable parts, or a place for me to get a good footing to climb out. That, and we had hardwood floors, so she would have heard me if I had, by some miraculous turn of events, been able to climb out of my crib. I'm an only child, and my dad typically slept on the couch. So the only other person upstairs at the time was my mom. I recently found this out, but my mother told me she used to take me up to the attic and just sit there with me, waiting for something to move. Nothing ever did, though. 2. It was the summer of 7th grade 2000. I lived in a small town in a Pennsylvania neighborhood with plenty of kids my age. Almost every weekend, the sounds of kids playing Ghost in the Graveyard would ring through backyards late into the night. It was around midnight when 2 friends and myself returned to my home. I decided to take a seat on the curb while we talked about 7th grade boys things. As we sat there, I noticed someone at the bottom of the street also sitting on the curb. I pointed them out and stood up to get a better look at who it was. The moment I began to stand, they did the same. I walked to the center of the street, and they did as well. All I could make out was a dark shadow. I waved, and they mirrored me. I waved my hands around, and they mirrored me again. Everything I did, they did. We were all laughing and thinking it was someone we knew. Finally, I put both hands up and flipped them off. Suddenly, they stopped. A few seconds of nothing. Then they darted across the street, disappearing behind the houses. Not even a few seconds passed before they come from behind a house, closer to us. They had to have come up the street, 3 or 4 houses, and there's no way they could have moved that fast behind the houses. They stood there in the middle of the road staring at us. We watched them silently. Then they did it again, swiftly walking back behind the houses, and appearing from behind a house only 3 driveways from where we stood. Finally, we could see that this wasn't a person, but a solid black mass. A silhouette in the shape of a man, roughly 5'5" to 6 feet tall. No face, no features, nothing but solid black. Pure fear filled us as we screamed and began to run. We ran right by my house, through the backyard to my friend's house. Our backyards connected. As we ran through the yard, we saw this thing one last time, standing beside the neighbor's garage, just watching us. As far as I know, none of us has seen it again. We all saw the same thing, and we all recall this happening. It's not often I chalk something up as paranormal, but I do believe in these things. This is something I'll never forget. 3. I was around 4 when this happened, and I'm not sure if I was dreaming or not. When I was 2, my mom got me a babysitter, because she was too busy working a 9-to-5 job every day. The babysitter was really cool and all, but she was a bit odd. Not that it matters or something. There were nights when I would sleep at their apartment because I really loved spending time with them. However, I wouldn't really sleep, unless it was necessary. I loved watching TV and playing with my toys. When I was about 4, she told me about a spirit who would go to the kids who wouldn't sleep at night and tell them, "Bagate in pat," which roughly translates as "put yourself in bed." His name was Duhul Patuuli, which translates to the bed spirit. I didn't really believe in that said spirit until one night. It was around 2 a.m. and I woke up for no reason. I decided to get out of bed. I had to climb over my babysitter because I was sleeping with her and see what's up. I felt like I was being watched, and I wanted to see what's the problem. And there it was. It was standing in front of the door, right beside the bed. It was exactly how my babysitter described it. Tall, white, no apparent facial features, having a bride-like veil looking at me. He was pointing at me, then pointed at the bed and said, "Bagate in pat," with the most unnerving tone I have ever heard. I instantly jumped into the bed and tried to sleep as fast as I could. I woke up scared and I told her about what happened. And she told me something along the lines of, "That's what happens when you don't sleep when you're supposed to." That was the only time I have witnessed it, and I'm still not sure if it was just a dream or reality. 4. This is my personal story. Some of it from my own memory and some from what my mom tells me. First of all, I have a photographic memory and can remember details from when I was 2 years old, which is when this took place. We lived in a small house in Santa Ana, California. My mom, my dad, and me. I could draw a picture of my bedroom, I remember it so clearly. When I would be napping in my room, my mom would hear me talking. She would come to check on me and find me standing at the corner of my crib, facing my closet. But she figured I was just babbling. I would point to my open closet and mumble some gibberish, but since she never saw anything, she dismissed it. I had a monster in my closet. I remember it in detail. My closet had 2 sliding doors, and the right-hand door was always open because that's where my mom tossed my dirty clothes. That's where the monster was. I know what you're thinking. It was just the clothes in a heap. But it definitely was not. Anytime the lights were out, even in the daylight, the monster was there, talking to me. It was a short pig troll thing. I could probably draw a picture of it, but when my mom would come in and turn the light on, he'd vanish. I don't remember anything he said to me, and I don't remember even being afraid. Just that he was there. When I was old enough to tell my mom about it, she told me about other creepy things that had happened in the house. My parents were given a portrait of Jesus with a clock on it, and hung it on the wall at the end of the hallway. Every morning my mom would notice that it was crooked, and she would straighten it. We did not live near any train tracks or anything else that would cause this heavy wooden picture and clock to move. One day, sick of straightening the clock, my mom mounted it to the wall with brackets to hold it stable. The next morning, it was laying on the floor. She told me about finding broken dishes in the mornings and smelling sulfur periodically. When the incidents piled up, and she had had enough, she asked a prayer group from her church to come cleanse the house and pray over it. They did, and the activity stopped. For a while. When it started again, we moved. Having been so young during this time, I don't remember a lot of the details about what happened. But I have images forever burned into my memory of that monster in my closet. To this day, all closet doors are completely shut in my house. 5. Ever since I was little, my parents have always been friends with Pat, a friendly bachelor. We lived in Australia for the first 11 years of my life, where he met my parents while visiting from Canada. Though I was too young to remember, he even spent a few Christmases with all of my dad's side of the family. When we decided to make the move to Canada, he quickly became my dad's best friend. We moved only 4 hours away from where he lives. The two always enjoy fishing, hunting, and general manly things. He spends most weekends in the summer and hunting seasons at my parents' house in the country, outside of a small Canadian city. He's a lonely but lovely man. I have, and always will, think of him as family. Pat has never married, even though he was engaged at least twice, possibly 3 times. He traveled lots in his younger years and had a love of foreign girls, falling for both Kiwi, New Zealand, and an Irish girl. Unfortunately, neither panned out. He lost both his parents to cancer early in his adulthood, only to lose a sibling later in life to cancer as well. When his parents passed, he inherited their house. A nice 2-story brick house in a good neighborhood, with a large fenced yard. The thing about Pat is, he loves his toys. His yard is always full of his new buys or projects. The inside of the house is something different altogether. When I walked into the house for the first time a couple of years ago, I was instantly unsettled by the decor. Firstly, it didn't suit Pat at all. Not the plush coral carpet right out of the 80s, or the slightly fuzzy couches with their incredibly low seats. To me, the house was cool, not uncomfortable, just noticeable. As I wandered through the rest of the quaint house, I started to notice little bowls of candy everywhere, filled with the kind your grandmother seems to always have. I was so unsettled, I even felt sick and dizzy most of the evening, having felt fine right up until stepping in the front door of that house. My mother and I were only staying one night, to catch a plane the next morning, so I braved it. That night nothing happened, but I barely slept. Always on the verge of sleeping, but never quite falling under. As you could imagine, the next day's flight I was a mess, grumpy and tired. My mother also barely slept, claiming she just felt unsettled the entire night. We had planned to spend the night there when we flew back into the city, but decided to just make the 4-hour drive home instead. Both of us knowing a sleep in our own beds would be better. We stayed at Pat's twice more over the next few months. Always just my mother and I. Pat never stayed at the house when we were there. He was usually at our house for the weekend, keeping my dad and brother company. Every visit was unsettling. We barely slept. And those damn candy bowls creeped me out. I had asked Pat about the candy bowls when I had seen him before staying at his house for the second time. And he proceeded to tell me that his mother loved candy and always had bowls in every room. He never got rid of them. The bowls she put out and filled with candy over 20 years ago remained in the exact same places. During visits I explored more. I've got a curious nature, some may call it a bit nosy. Each room is the same, filled with boxes, old photographs, and layers of dust. There's also a basement I've yet to dare explore. Nothing has changed, not even the bedspreads or quilts we sleep under when we stay. The largest bed in the house is a double, Pat's bed. The rest, tiny single beds and rock-hard mattresses to go along with them. Some rooms even housing old TV sets in the corner, covered by faded, dusty sheets. The layers of dust caked my fingers when I dragged them across the screen when I lifted the sheets. Again, no one had touched them for years, which is what I'm trying to express. This house is literally frozen in time, stuck back to when his mother passed not long after his father. Now, neither of them passed in the house. I did wonder slightly about them coming back and haunting the house. I'm not a skeptic, but I really don't know much about the rules of the afterlife. But I do believe in ghosts. They died younger than they should have of a horrible disease. If it was me, I'd be pissed enough to stick around, wallowing over my unfinished, unfulfilled life. So if they were going to be stuck in a purgatory of some kind, the house staying in this creepy frozen state could only encourage that, right? Several months ago, I had had my last and hopefully final stay at Pat's, when my mother and I arrived late in the evening. Pat was away for the night, I can't recall where, most likely my parents' house. We struggled with the 2 doors to get in, the lock sticking for some reason, alarms going off. It wasn't anything that I thought twice about at the time, but I did notice it was a messier entrance to the house than it had ever been. This time, as soon as I walked in the house, it was cold, not cool. It was frigid. I had instant goosebumps. I promptly walked inside, ignoring everything else on my way to the thermostat, only to find it set to a balmy 70 degrees Fahrenheit. When I commented on my perception of the temperature to my mum, she exclaimed it was nice and toasty for a late November in Canada. This instantly weirded me out. Why was I feeling so cold? Was I getting sick? As mothers do, mine promptly assumed I must have been hungry or going to faint, so she fixed me something to eat and drink. Though I wasn't hungry because I had eaten on the road or thirsty, or even feeling faint. I felt fine, just freezing cold and unsettled, like I always was in this house. This visit, I was much more vocal about how the house made me feel, and how I wanted this to be the last time we stayed here. We'd get a hotel room if we needed to stay in the city again. After a shower, I snuggled as best I could into the creaky single bed on the other side of the small room from my mum. We hadn't shared a house, let alone a bedroom, in a while. So naturally, we spent a few hours just staying awake, chatting and catching up. But I think it was partly because both of us knew we weren't going to be able to sleep. I didn't sleep, not a wink. I lay awake on my phone the entire night, shivering. No matter what I did, I couldn't get warm. Not even the extra hot shower I took before did anything to warm my chilled bones. The next morning, the alarm sounded sometime before 6 a.m. Mom got up first, heading to the bathroom. I opened my eyes long enough to see her turn the light on and grab her toiletry bag. She left the room, leaving the light on. I heard the bathroom door shut, so I closed my eyes again, huddling under the old-smelling quilts, enjoying a few more moments of rest. It didn't last long. I threw the blankets off, ready to face the day, only to find the lights off. I knew they were on only moments ago. I had watched my mom turn them on. I stopped for only a moment to think about how creepy that was, but decided it was best not to dwell on it while I was still in the house. I can be a tad superstitious. I went about the rest of my morning, cool, but nowhere near the cold I was during that night. We weren't having breakfast at the house, so I didn't come downstairs till we were just about to leave. The bedroom and the bathroom both on the second floor of the house. I stopped at the top of the stairs to double check I had everything before heading down. There's 2 flights of plush coral carpeted stairs. Each only have like 5 to 7 steps. There's also a large landing between the 2 flights. As I walked down the first flight and got to the landing, I noticed it got really cold again, so I looked at my surroundings. There was a small table with plant and photograph on it. On the walls there is Pat's parents' wedding photo, and some family photos. It's a nice nook area. Now as I grabbed onto the banister to walk down the stairs, somehow my left foot slipped out from underneath me. Now I can already hear all the logical people saying it's just the carpet, or I'm just klutzy. I had those exact thoughts myself as the logical, level-headed female I am. But, listen here, I've been a dancer most of my life. I'm not klutzy. I'll be sure-footed and balanced till the day I die. And my foot slipped before I'd even begun to move it to take the first step. It felt like it was grabbed and pulled down. I fell hard on my arse, and slid all the way down the steps led by my left foot. My mum came rushing around the corner after I fell, but as I looked up, I could have swore I saw something going around the corner of the staircase wall. I couldn't tell you what I saw or if it was just a trick of the eye. It was just a movement of some dark shape, like a wispy deep grey flash. I remember thinking it out of place in a house filled with only colours of off-white coral or yellowy beige. It was just a little too coincidental, after having such odd, unsettling experiences in this house, every time I stayed there. I ended up with a slightly sprained ankle from the initial fall, and a tender wrist, but left the event relatively unharmed. But I've never been able to shake this event. Pat has a new girlfriend who I'm sure has stayed the night, though I've never asked her if she's felt anything while being there. Maybe I should. I've never even asked Pat about it either. I think because I know he'd think I was mental. He's a definite skeptic. So what do you guys think? Haunted purgatory house, or am I just crazy? Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 37. Thank you very much to everyone who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Okay, let's see, this will be a Friday, you guys get this? Now, as we frequently are, as I'm recording this, TIFU is looking uncertain for a Saturday. I will try my hardest to get it done, of course, but if I can't, there will be a video of some sort up on Saturday. Not sure what. If I don't have the TIFU stories, I'll probably just decide last minute what I'm doing when I sit down to record for the weekend's videos. Okay, and with that, I'm going to nip off and try and get the glitch video finished, which I started recording before this, but I didn't have enough stories until I was finished recording this, so I'm going to go finish it now. Okay. And with that, I'm heading off. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.